Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee, and we've been talking a lot about preparedness on this channel lately, and that has involved a few different conversations that we've had, but there's one that I've been really wanting to not only pursue for myself, but bring to you as well, and that is canning, but not just regular canning meals, canning proteins. So a feedback that I received on a couple of my other videos where I talked about my deep freezer is that if we were to lose electricity, all of the food that I have stored in my deep freezer would eventually be ruined. Of course, you can keep it closed and it'll stay for a few days, but ultimately if the power doesn't come back on right away, that food will be spoiled unless we eat it or preserve it in some way right away. And I had said that I really wanted to get a quarter cow or split half a cow with my parents, and I don't love the idea of having that much money worth of meat in my freezer susceptible to power outages. We are pursuing a generator, and as soon as we've got that figured out, I will absolutely make a video about that. But I wanted to do something practically in the meantime while I'm saving up and working out the generator situation. And so pressure canning is the solution to that. If you don't have a generator, if you're not ever planning on having a generator, if you don't have a deep freezer and you want to keep meat on hand, you can process it so that it is shelf stable. And that's what we're going to do today. This is my first time, not my first time pressure canning, but my first time pressure canning meat as well as ready to eat meals. And that's the other part of this. Even if you don't care about preparedness at all, it's great to have food on your shelves that you can pop open and eat for dinner right away. And so that's kind of what I'm looking into pursuing. It'd be great from an emergency standpoint, but it would be great anyway, just from a feeding my family standpoint. So today we're going to be using this book, the all new Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. Now in this book, because this has plenty of regular canning recipes too, but towards the back here it says simple 1-jar meals, and there are several to choose from. So this is the book that we will be using today, and we're going to be doing beef stroganoff and shredded chipotle beef for tacos. Except for the shredded beef, I don't have the chipotle chili peppers and adobo that it calls for, so it's just going to be really the beef, and that's fine. I can season it afterwards. But I bought a chuck roast and I bought a beef brisket. These pieces of meat are very expensive because I got them from my local farm, the same farm that I get the milk from. And I think for the two pieces of meat, I spent like $70. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately. And I'm trying to be really careful how I deliver information to you guys because I want it to be really what the Holy Spirit wants me to share with you and not just what my own thoughts and emotions are making me want to share when it comes to the preparedness thing. And I have been feeling lately that I would put up food right now even if it can't be perfect. And what I mean by that is because I've said now several times in several different videos that I don't recommend going to the store and just buying all the processed stuff. We can do better than that. And obviously we are doing better than that today by canning. But if you cannot get the best of the best cuts of meat to pressure can to put in these meals, I would still just buy what you can and go for it. Because I'm going to get 8 jars of food today, 8 pint-sized jars, mind you, 4 if we were doing quarts. It's just my husband and I, so we can manage with just a pint, the 2 of us for a dinner. But if you're a large family, you would need a quart. You'd get 4 quarts or 8 jars for these 2 recipes that we're going to do today, and it cost me about $70 to do that, and that's a lot of money. So if you're in a place where you're not able to do that, if you're not able to source the best of the best meat, I don't want you to count yourself out. I think at this point right now, as it stands, we just need to be putting food up. Like plain and simple, we just need to be putting food up. And I need to be careful how I deliver information because in the past, when this wasn't so much about preparedness as it was just about health, I would say, like, no, really strive to get the really good quality ingredients so that what you're feeding your family is really quality. And I've even encouraged people to go without. If you can't, I've said before, if you can't source really good quality chicken, then don't eat chicken. And I've lived that way myself. You know, it's hard to come across really well-raised, organic, pasture-raised chicken that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. It's really expensive. And so we don't eat a lot of chicken because I'm not going to buy the CAFO chicken from the grocery store. I think at this point in time, with as ridiculously expensive as things are, and with this feeling of we need to prepare, I think I need to pull back a little on that and say, okay, if all you can afford is the chicken from the store, but you're canning it and preparing it yourself, it's still going to be better than, well, A, starving, and B, purchasing, I don't know, canned chicken from the grocery store in the aluminum cans. Like, it's still going to be better than that, right? So even if it's not the best quality, I still encourage doing that. So I just wanted to give that little caveat because I have so many new subscribers and I'm so happy you're here. But if you're watching any of my old stuff, it's going to contradict a little bit with what I'm sharing with you right now, and it's for a reason. So, hopefully things settle down, or, prices go down and we can kind of balance out as a country and things get a little better. But in the meantime, just feed your family however you can feed your family. Okay, enough of that. All right, so this is actually a really easy thing. So we're going to do beef stroganoff, and I'm just going to read this to you. So for the beef stroganoff, you need a 2-pound boneless beef chuck, trimmed and cut into 2-inch chunks. Easy peasy. And then it says 1 cup of sliced mushrooms. I'm not going to do the mushrooms. My husband and I don't like them. 1 cup of chopped onion. We will do. 4 tablespoons of tomato paste. We will do. And then for the seasonings, we've got salt, ground pepper, Worcestershire sauce, thyme, parsley, garlic cloves. I don't have parsley, but I have everything else. So we will do that. And then the last ingredient that you need for both of these is beef broth. So actually on the stove right now, I have a batch of beef broth going. And it's been going since last night. So it's 11 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm actually getting a really late start today. And probably around 4 p.m. yesterday, I started a batch of broth, and then I set it on low and I let it simmer all night long. So this is a really, really good, nutritiously dense broth over here. It's going to be so good. So what we're going to do, we prepare all of our ingredients, we pack them in our jars, and then we top it off with the broth before we can it. That's how you put these together. It's so easy, you guys. This is a raw pack situation, so you cut up the meat and you put it raw into the jar, and these process in the pressure canner for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So it cooks it in the jar, and then it's shelf stable. So we're gonna have literal brisket shelf stable in a can or in a jar on our shelves to eat on a busy night or in an emergency, whatever the situation may be. It's available to us, and it's not in our freezer. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get my cutting board out, and I'm gonna get started preparing this meat. I did go out into the garden and harvest some onions, and I did not get the seasonings that I need. So I'll have to go out and get some thyme and some oregano, and it looks like that's all we'll need because I don't have parsley and I don't have cilantro. This is actually gonna be really easy, and I hope that this video encourages you that, wow, hey, actually this is a piece of cake. Why have I not been doing this before? I had numerous people ask me or make mention in the comments of my one preparedness video that's really popular. What do you recommend we do first? Like, what piece of infrastructure would you recommend we get first? And I said, water, which is actually the next thing I'm working on getting, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. But from a food standpoint, I recommend getting a pressure canner. A lot of people said freeze dryers. Yeah, but they're so expensive, and they're out of a lot of people's reach. It's out of my reach. I can't afford a freeze dryer. A pressure canner is expensive. I think mine was $350, $400, somewhere like that. But it's more manageable for more people, and you can put up so much food, and you can put up a variety of foods, fruits, vegetables, because a pressure canner can be used as a water bath canner, but a water bath canner cannot be used as a pressure canner. So you don't even need to have a water bath canner. You can buy a pressure canner and do both. It's a very versatile piece of kitchen equipment. I know it's really scary, but once you get over that and you've done it a couple times, it's not scary at all. It's really easy, and you can put up a lot of food. So that would be my recommendation. I'm just gonna throw these bits that are not suitable to go in the canning jars in the broth over here. And when I'm finished with a batch of broth, everything that's left after I drain the broth out, strain it out, is I give it to either Benny or I give it to the chickens or both. So those won't be wasted. They'll go to some animal. But in the meantime, all the nutrition can go into that broth. And I like that solution a lot. So I'm just gonna keep chopping this up here. All right, I've got this all chopped up. The only little tip I'll give you about that was make sure your pieces are similar in size, because you want to make sure that everything cooks through the same and cooks through thoroughly. And so I went through after I was done, I like cut a few that I left that were a lot bigger than the others. So I've got my meat, I've got my chopped onion and my chopped garlic, and we're gonna put this into a bowl here. Now, what I really like about these recipes, and I don't know if it's the same across all of the canning books, but they have you put all the ingredients together into one bowl and mix it together really thoroughly, and then you put it into the jars. And I like that because I feel like what I've seen other YouTubers do is like they'll layer the ingredients in the jars, they'll put the meat, and then they'll put the onion, and then they'll put the garlic, and then they'll put the seasonings. And I don't know, I don't like that as much. I don't know that I'd be able to get everything evenly in the jars, or what if I missed one when I was putting the garlic in or something. So I just really like the idea of getting everything all mixed together and then just putting it all into the jars. Now I'm going to start adding in my seasonings here. Now this calls for dry thyme, and I definitely don't have the amount that it's asking for. This is the rest of it from last year. I could go out and get fresh, but it is torrentially downpouring, and I really don't want to. So I have a little bit of dry thyme left, and for the next recipe, I have quite a bit of dried oregano, so that's fine. We'll just do that. And then the last thing that I need to add to this is the tomato paste. So now I'm going to just use my hands, and I'm going to mix this all together. All right, and now it just says to pack our jars. And I've never done this before, so I'm not sure how tightly these need to be packed. I have heard people say that you don't want to pack them too tightly because you want it to cook through properly. So I'm just going to go for it here and see what we end up with. So they're not tightly packed. There's actually quite a bit of space left in here. So that's fine. And then you fill in the gaps with broth. Okay, now this is truly very fresh broth. It has not been strained. It's been going on the stove for almost 24 hours now. We're getting close to 24 hours. So it needs to be strained. So I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to use my funnel. I'm going to put my strainer on top of it, and this is how I'm going to fill it up with broth. And let's see what the headspace needs to be. You want to leave a 1-inch headspace. And it does say you might not have room for very much broth. We shall see. Now, in a second, we're going to go through and remove bubbles, and that is very important for something like this because there is lots of room for potential bubbles. And when we do that, we may find that we need to add more broth because it may free up some space in the jar. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right. So I'm just going to use a clean knife here to go in and try to get out any bubbles that may be hanging out in here. Yes, so we got quite a few bubbles out of this one, and we certainly need to add more broth. Every one of these needs a little bit more broth. Let's go ahead and add it. All right, that looks great. Now, the next step is a very important one. This is a very fatty food that we are making here. The broth has fat in it. The meat had fat left on it. There's a lot of fat here. And if fat gets up on the rim of your jar, it can inhibit your seal. Now, with the modern world as it is now, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like if these don't seal, I'll pop it in the fridge. We'll have it for dinner this week. But let's go ahead and get best practices here. We want these to seal, of course. And so I'm going to take a paper towel with distilled white vinegar, and that's going to cut through any grease or fat that may be hanging out on the rim of our jars. I'm going to do that for each one. Yes, this is very greasy. I can feel it on my fingers. So I'm glad that we're being very thorough in our cleaning. You always want to take a look at your lids and make sure that in the gummy part here, there's no imperfections of any kind that would inhibit a seal. You put it on, and then you put your ring on fingertip tight, which means using your fingertips, you tighten it as tight as you can get it using your fingertips. You don't want to take your palm and really wrench down on it. You just want to use your fingertips. And you'll see that in all the canning books. That's what that means when it says fingertip tight. Let's talk about pressure canners. This is my All-American 921 model pressure canner. I absolutely love this thing, and I highly recommend this pressure canner. I know there are some popular YouTubers out there who use electric pressure canners. You will never catch me using an electric pressure canner because you would need to take it to get tested to be sure that it is consistently, year after year, producing the same pounds of pressure, getting to the same temperature that it needs to safely can the food. This, you can be sure that it is for two reasons. This measures your temperature and your pressure two different ways. It has the regular dial gauge, and it also has the weighted gauge, which we will get to in a moment. The weighted gauge is pretty foolproof and does not need to be calibrated or tested because it's always the same. It is going to operate properly year after year, time after time, even if this doesn't. So I recommend this pressure canner because often many of the others, even if they're not electric, they won't have the weighted, they'll just have the dial. You need to take that to your local extension office and get it tested and possibly recalibrated to be sure that the numbers that you're getting are actually what they say they are. This is very important because if you are not canning your food, getting it up to the temperature that the recipe says it needs to be at, it may not be killing everything in there and it may not be safe to eat. This is important. So I don't like the electric pressure canners because you're just relying on a digital screen to tell you what temperature something is. And if it falters or isn't correct or has an error of some kind, you may end up eating food that's not safe. And, hopefully you'd have a pressure canner, for 5, 6, 7, 8 years that you'd want to use season after season. You don't know that it's operating the same on year 8 as it was on year 1 when you purchased it. But with the weighted gauge, you're sure that it is. And so I'll show you what the different weights are and whatnot when we get over to the stove here. But I just wanted to make that little caveat. I love the All-American. They don't have a rubber seal. It's a metal on metal seal. So there is very little about this that could break or go wrong. These have been passed down for generations. When I was looking into which one I wanted, I was reading reviews from people saying that they were using their All-American pressure canner that they got from their grandmother, that their grandmother bought new 30 years ago. I mean, these things are just amazing. I'm not affiliated with them. I have no discount code for you. I mean, that would be amazing. I would certainly be open to that, but currently I don't. This is just, I feel safe pressure canning food using this. And people get nervous about pressure canning because of the pressure, because they're afraid it's going to explode. This has an emergency pop-off valve back here, this little black button that you can't see. If this were to overheat or overpressurize, this pops out and makes a ridiculous noise. I've heard, it's never happened to me, but I've heard people say. You very clearly know something is wrong. You come and you turn the heat off. This is releasing the pressure for you. You just let it come down to pressure and then you're good. And you can put that it's not broken. You put the little thingy back in, you figure out why that happened and just don't do that again. And it's safe. It's not going to explode. It's not going to kill you. Nothing like that. So love my All-American pressure canner. I trust it. I'm happy to eat and feed my family food that has come out of it. And I 100% recommend if you're considering getting a pressure canner, get this one. I will have it linked down in the description for you. Okay. So pressure canners are not like water bath canners. You don't need to cover, with water bath canners, you want to cover whatever you're canning with 1 inch or 2 of water. With this, you want 1 inch or 2 of water in there. It is being canned by pressurized steam, not by the water. And so I think it's actually 2 or 3 inches of water. And I keep the instruction book and the pressure gauge in here so that it never gets lost. Definitely recommend always having this on hand. I like to reference it occasionally because, again, you do need to be safe with this. Even though this does have measures in place, you still do need to be safe and make sure that you're doing what you need to do. So I keep the instruction book right on hand, and it says pour 2 to 3 inches of hot water in canner unless otherwise specified, which it's not in this recipe. The 921 model lets you stack 2 layers. I'm not going to have to do that right now, obviously. But it does come with 2 of these. So one of them's already down there, and then it's got a second one so that you could put a second stack, but we obviously don't need that. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with 2 to 3 inches of hot water. Okay, now we're over here by the stove. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I'm just going to have it on high. we've got our jars here. Now these are warm-ish because we put hot broth in here, but these were room temperature ingredients, so it's just lukewarm. We put hot water in here, but just from the sink, so it's not super hot. So right now these are close-ish in temperature, so we want to put them in now because you don't ever want to put jars into water that is drastically different in temperature than the jars themselves. That can lead to cracking of jars. And actually I was just on the phone with my mom this morning and that happened to her. She lost 3 jars of peaches recently because of that. So it's a thing. So you want to make sure that your temperature of your jars matches the temperature of your water, at least closely. It doesn't have to be the same, but at least close. So we're going to go ahead and put those in now. The heat's on high, and we are going to add our lid. Now you may be able to see here that my vent hood almost doesn't make it possible for me to do this on my stove. Thankfully, I can make it work, but it is close. This has a little notch right here, and this has an arrow, and you want to line these up. And what that does is it takes these little hooks and it places it underneath. And so that helps hold the lid on, and now this is lined up. The other thing that you want to do is kind of look at it and eyeball it, and you want to kind of adjust it so that the gap is the same all around, or at least close to being the same all around. And then once you have it close, you can start tightening your lug nuts. You want to put them up across from each other. So you'll take one here and then the one back here, and you will not tighten them very tight, just screw them on. And then the next 2 that are across from each other, and then the next 2 that are across from each other. Tighten them up. And then now that you've got them all on, you can go through and tighten them. And you really do want to. It's not like the jars on the lids on the jars where you're just fingertip tight. You want to go through, don't use tools or anything, but just as tight as you can get them with your hands, tighten them. Great. So this is good. This is ready. This is in absolutely no way, shape, or form scary or dangerous. We only just turned the heat on. It's going to take a while for this to get up to any kind of crazy temperature. These take an hour and 15 minutes to process. The very first thing that we are looking for, because we can't start the timer yet, we're not there yet, we are looking for this little spout here to start shooting up steam. And you want it to have a steady stream of steam, and as soon as it does start producing a steady stream of steam, you start a timer for 10 minutes. You want this to be producing steam for 10 minutes. So that's what we're looking for right now. We have the heat on high. We've got our jars in there. Everything's good. We are just waiting for that steam. Okay, this is the pressure regulator weight. This has been putting out steam consistently for 10 minutes now. We are going to put it on the 10. I don't know if you'll be able to see the numbers. No, not really. There's a 5, a 10, and a 15. Let's put it on. It'll be a lot more quiet. Ooh, that part always scares me. All right, so the pressure regulator weight has the 5, the 10, and the 15, and that has to do with your elevation. And I don't remember. You'll have to, if you have one of these, the packet explains it. But for my elevation, I need the 10, and that's 10 pounds of pressure, 10 psi. And so that regulates, that tells me when this is at 10 psi, 10 pounds of pressure. And so even if this dial gauge is not working properly, I really never even look at it, to be honest with you. I always go off of the pressure regulator weight. So what it'll do is when it starts to get up, when it gets up to 10 pounds, this will jiggle. The pressure regulator weight will jiggle. And you start your timer for canning your food when that jiggles for the first time. And then from there, the entire time, the entire hour and 15 minutes that this is canning, you want that to jiggle at least 4 times per minute. I think the book gives you really specific guidelines on that. I can't remember exactly what it says. I just know that when I do it, I look for it to jiggle around 4 times per minute. It can jiggle a little more than that, but you don't want it to jiggle any less than that because the jiggles tell you that it's at the appropriate weight. So as long as it's jiggling, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's at the right temperature. Everything is fine and good. So this always takes a second to get up to pressure, but it looks like it's trying to jiggle. The whole point is when you put the pressure regulator weight on, there's that first jiggle. See how it's jiggling really excessively? I turned the heat down to medium because it was still on high. It does not need to stay on high the whole time. So this will stop jiggling as soon as the temperature kind of chills out a little bit. There we go. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for there to be pauses between the jiggles. So every time it pauses and then jiggles again, that's its own separate jiggle. And in the very beginning, when you're first learning how to can, you need to have a timer on your phone and you need to count them. So every 60 seconds, you want it to jiggle 1 to 4 times. It can jiggle more than 4 times, but you don't want it to jiggle less, and you don't want it to jiggle excessively. If it's jiggling like crazy, it's too hot, so you can turn it down. I have it on low right now because it was jiggling way too much. But now I'm going to turn it back up. I have a gas stove, so you have to find that sweet spot, at least for me with gas. I don't know how it is with electric. I've never canned on electric, but I have to find that sweet spot because if it's just too hot, it'll jiggle like crazy, and if it's too down too far, then it won't jiggle, and it needs to jiggle. So even now, look how far it's been between jiggles. That's too far, and I know that from experience, even though I don't have a timer up. So I'm going to turn this back up a little bit and go for a jiggle, and we'll see how it does. Okay, this is almost done over here. It's got about 3 minutes left, and so I want to go ahead and get our next one in the jars. We're not going to be able to put it in there right away because this needs to come down in pressure, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is the shredded beef for tacos. I've got my cubed beef, onion, garlic, salt, and oregano. No liquid ingredients in this one. The other one had tomato paste, and Worcestershire. This doesn't. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get this kind of roughly mixed together. And then I've got 4 jars here. It has taken me a little bit of time because I'm doing 2 separate canner batches. Looking back on it, I think it probably would have been wise to prepare it all at once and do 1 canner batch. Now I have to listen to the canner and be in the kitchen for a total of 2 hours and 30 minutes instead of just doing 1 canner batch. So looking back, I would have done it that way, but that's okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this in my jars. The timer is gonna go off in 40 seconds, and when it does, all I'm gonna do is turn the heat off. That needs to reduce in temperature before I can do anything with it. So you have to pay very close attention to this guy because when it gets to 0, you immediately have to take that guy off. And if you don't, and it goes to 0 and you leave the pressure regulator weight on, this is going to form a vacuum and it's going to be very difficult to get the lid off. So you really have to watch it. And it usually takes, I've never counted, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes from the time that you turn the canner off to get down to 0. I'm gonna be honest, I am so afraid of the vacuum seal that I pretty much never wait for it to like really touch 0. It's just about there. So you wanna use a hot pad because this thing is very hot, and you wanna take it off, and it will go ahead and let out the rest of the steam. And you wanna wait 2 minutes for the rest of that steam to vent. Okay, now it's time for me to take the lid off, but I'm not going to film myself doing it because I always look like such an idiot because it's heavy and hard. But basically all you do is you unhook the, I can go ahead and, you unhook these. And then you want to make sure that you open it away from your face because there's still steam that'll come out of there and you don't want it to get you in the face. Okay, I'm gonna take my glasses off. I don't need to see anything right now, and my mom said she hates when you can see light reflected on my glasses. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this now. I have the second batch going in the canner right now, but I'm cutting it super close on getting that done in time for me to go to work. So that was a mistake running those in 2 separate canner batches. I should have put them in the same one. I've got more than enough room in that canner to do that. So, that's what I like about homesteading. You learn how to be more efficient just by doing, and so I'll know for next time to do it that way, but that's fine. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up now so I'm not having to do it after they come out of the canner. The purpose of this video was not so much sharing recipes. I need to think about that. Those are not my recipes. They're from the Ball canning book. So is it appropriate for me to give you like the step-by-step measurements and recipes from somebody else's cookbook? Is that okay? Do other people do that? Anyway, I'll at least link the book for you down in the description. It's a great one. I like that one because it has really unique stuff. I feel like some of the other books I have are your very traditional canning green beans, canning peaches, like very standard. This one has really fun like mashups, like different fun twists on recipes. So check that out. It'll be linked in the description. But the point of this video was more to just kind of encourage you about pressure canning. I know that pressure canning can be really scary, but I hope that after this video today you see that it's really not all that scary, and I hope you give it a try. One of the things that I like to encourage people to can first would be either beans or broth, because both are just very easy. This is, I guess, more advanced, canning whole meals like this with meat. I've never done it before myself, but that first batch turned out perfect. So I'm really excited about it. But yeah, we've just been talking a lot about preparedness, and like I've said in previous videos, it's really important to me that if we're going to do that, if we're going to bring preparedness and like disaster prepping and things like that into this channel, I need to make sure that it still fits the theme, because above all else, this is a homesteading channel and this is my life. I'm sharing things as I myself am doing them, and I am being very cognizant right now of food storage and production, and just overall general preparedness, as I feel life right now is just really wild, really crazy stuff happening in the world right now. So I want to be able to feed my family and have clean water and whatnot, just in case. So that's kind of where we're at. But pressure canning is a great option for that, because as many people pointed out, if you use if you lose electricity, then whatever you were storing using electricity will be ruined relatively quickly. And so anything that you can have shelf stable is a plus. And I've got pasta sauces and things like that, but to have meals with protein, beef, meat, canned, shelf stable on your shelf, that's awesome. So I just kind of wanted to touch on a few different things. Also talking to you earlier about how you don't have to have the best of the best ingredients to do this. I stand by that. If you are able to source the best quality stuff, then of course you should. But I feel like so many people have been saying to me, like, we just can't afford it. We just can't afford it. Like, it's so expensive right now. And in a time where we're feeling squished financially, but we're also feeling urgency to prepare, there's got to be some kind of middle ground here, right? And so I feel like if you're putting together a meal with whole ingredients, like with these, even if those ingredients aren't the best quality, it's still better than some of the alternatives out there in the grocery store. So I think it's a good safe bet. Check the description for the link to my pressure canner. They have different sizes, so see which one best suits you, your needs, and your budget. And let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. I have so many other pressure canning meal ideas that I will be sharing with you, and I'll have to think about whether I would like to be able to give you the full recipes. I just need to do a little research on that and see if that's appropriate. But thanks so much for hanging out with me in the kitchen today, you guys. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to see more content like this in the future. Have faith and keep moving forward. Bye, friends.